And a good Thursday evening to you. Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley live with you right now from the News 2 Impact Center. We're talking all, of course, about the tropics, the local weather, everything in between. Hurricane Erin has really taken up most of our attention over the last couple of weeks. Remember, we started tracking this storm a very long time ago. Ever since it was all the way over by Africa, now it's finally starting to move away from the Carolinas after its closest approach. So we're with you now to kind of wrap things up, show you what's going on. And coming up in a couple of minutes, we're hoping to talk to somebody who's been in the Outer Banks, covered the Outer Banks news for a while, and he can kind of add some perspective for us on how this one has compared to all the others. They're no stranger to storms over there. Here's the latest satellite image from space. Of course, this is something that we're looking at in a pretty good way because it's moving off to sea, moving farther away from us bit by bit, and we're going to continue to see it get farther and farther away. Obviously, Erin is an enormous system. One of the ways you can measure something like this is just how big or wide the cloud field is. The cloud field here is insane. It's about 500 to 800 miles wide. That's not the true way to measure the size of a hurricane. That's not really showing you anything about the winds, but it is a very big system. And one that we've are happy to say did not hit us, was not expected to. We kind of alerted you to that turn for several days, and you kind of have to trust us in those moments. I know it can be nerve-wracking when you see it on the screen, and it was a Cat 4, Cat 5 for a little while. Even still, right now at the 5 o'clock advisory this evening, wind speed has maintained at about 100 miles per hour. Now it's moving out to the north and east at 20 miles per hour, so that's really fast for a hurricane. And a lot of times what happens is as they gain latitude and they get farther and farther north, they move their way along the jet stream, and it pushes them faster and faster and faster. So that's what's been going on, and that's why it's continuing to push its way out to sea. So the impacts from the storm are not over, even though you might think so. Typically, a lot of times the storm moves in and it moves out, and that'll be it. Well, unfortunately for tonight, we're coming up on another high tide. So with storms like this in the fragile Outer Banks, made up of mostly sand and dunes, the fragile time frames are when you have the high tides, and that's what we're seeing this evening. So a live shot from different parts of Highway 12. You have Hatteras Village on the lower left here. There's a whole lot of flooding there. On the north side, these are on the upper left, that's Canal Zone, which is pretty close to the Oregon Inlet Bridge. And then you have Buxton. A lot of these places have been getting flooded regularly, especially at the high tide frames. And if you look at this image, what you'll really notice is you can see how the dunes have kind of really taken a beating and been decimated by this. So they were there, now they're not really as much. So it's a lot easier for it to flood until they get built back. So it's going to be a process to get Highway 12 back up and functional. I'm not sure how long it'll take. They don't have an estimate on it either. It's not unheard of for the road to be closed for days when you have a storm quite like this. Now, obviously, the waves have been punishing and big and large, and that's kind of what we've been seeing. So where do we go from here? Well, they're still high right now, and they'll continue to stay that way through tonight. There's a lot of pushing of water still from the hurricane that's really affecting these Outer Banks beaches the most. So the northern ones are still bearing the brunt of the beating. Going into tomorrow morning, still looking at a good amount of waves. Not so in the Wilmington area or anything like that. Things should be improving. And then by Friday afternoon, kind of going back to normal. So we're starting to get back closer to our normalcy by Friday night and into the day on Saturday. We really should be in much better shape at that point. Still waiting on rip current forecasts to come out for the most part for tomorrow. A lot of beaches will still have a high rip current risk for Friday. So if you do have plans out that way, best to stay out of the water. The exception would be farther off to the south. In the parts of South Carolina, the oceans are calming down there. So more of a moderate rip current risk for Friday. And then on Saturday, we should be able to start to calm things down a little bit. Just to kind of let you know where the storm has been and where it's going, it's on the move. It's moving quickly. It'll be still a very strong storm as it pushes across the Atlantic. And oh, by the way, it's sailing over to Ireland even so. Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday might not hit them directly, but just to go to show you how far this thing is moving, it's booking it. and it is going to make up some ground for sure. We haven't talked too much about local weather here. We'll talk more about Erin with our friend Sam Walker out in the Outer Banks to help us know what's been going on out that way. But here locally, as far as your Greensboro area weather, we had a high temperature today of about 87 degrees. We had a morning low of 70. Both of those are a little bit above average, but pretty much on the nose. I will say sunset tonight is at 8:02, so we're creeping up on those darker days of the year. Something that I found interesting for today, just an odd stat. We only had one day this month so far that's hit 90 degrees. Only twice have we ever had a totally 90-degree free month of August. So that's unusual to say the least. 1996, 1971, two of those times. So this is a weird month. We might not hit 90 again the rest of the month either. There's only about 10 days left. Temperatures this evening are still in the mid-80s, but I did want to show you the radar. We're noticing here a bit of a trend that there are these showers that are forming along the Blue Ridge and kind of heading south. So as we go through the rest of our evening, it's possible you might encounter a bit of a downpour every now and again. So take a look at what I mean. We are seeing some showers that could develop into thunderstorms out here, Wilkes County, Yadkin County, Surrey County as well. This is something we'll keep tracking for you tonight. Shouldn't be much of an issue for most of the weekend, but we are seeing that right now, that there's a bit of a rain chance through the next couple of hours. And our Futurecast has an idea on this too. So through the evening, watch for this mostly west of Winston-Salem. And then going into Friday morning, what we're having is we're seeing a bit of a northeast flow. So this wind flow kind of coming in like this, sometimes that can allow a collection of moisture up against the mountains. And so there could be some rain out in our western counties and in the foothills too. Whereas for most of us in the Triad, for Friday, we should be mostly just dry. Cloudy in the morning, getting more sun as the day goes along, and pretty comfortable. It's not all that hot tomorrow. It's not that sticky either. Saturday looks good. Sunday looks good as well. So things are improving a little bit. We've got a little bit of a weak cold front pushing south for tomorrow, lowering our dew points ever so slightly. But the real one that you'll want to watch, we have two fronts in the forecast. After tomorrow, there's another one coming up on Tuesday. That's going to make a big difference to how it feels outside, not just for high temperatures, but also for low temperatures. So take a look at this. Your temperature outlook, the favorability for the temperatures by the end of the month, this is next week, way below average, way below normal here. So that's kind of the expectation, something you wouldn't normally expect for the month of August, but go ahead and just drink it in. Morning lows in the 50s, afternoon highs in the 70s. That is something unusual for sure. So let's take a look at that. I'll tell you, it's going to feel a lot different as we go into next week. In the meantime, we'll enjoy some pretty comfortable weather, looking pretty good for Friday night football games as week 1 kicks off tomorrow. Stick around, we'll be right back with an interview with our Outer Banks correspondent.